Season 2 of Shibuya has ended, leaving us with countless questions. In this video, I'm breaking down the full story of the Itadori Extermination arc and Perfect Preparation arc. We'll also uncover why is Yuta Okkotsu determined to kill Yuji, how did Megumi become the new head of the Zenin Clan, and what happened to Maki that made her awaken terrifying power like Toji Zenin. We'll also uncover who's really inside Suguru Geto's body. Is it Noritoshi Kamo or the ancient sorcerer Kenjaku? Plus, I'll explain the deadly rules of the Culling Game and why Master Tengen is hiding from Kenjaku. The story begins with Okkotsu meeting the higher-ups. They express their gratitude for eliminating a few cursed spirits in Tokyo. Okkotsu bluntly urges them to get to the point and promises to follow their orders without hesitation. One of the higher-ups laughs and remarks that killing a few cursed spirits does not prove anything significant. Okkotsu responds calmly and states that he has no issue entering into a binding vow. He assures them that he does not care about Yuji being Gojo's student. He further declares that he wants to kill Yuji himself for causing Inumaki to lose his arm during the events in Shibuya. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the Zenin Clan headquarters, where Naoya Zenin, the special grade 1 sorcerer, just arrives. He inquires about Mai Zenin's well-being, and Maki's mother tells him to focus on the head of the clan instead. She adds that the person who is truly dying is Maki. She explains that while Maki might be pretty, she is unacceptable within their clan because she does not know how to support a man. She further states that any woman who cannot walk 3 steps behind a man should be stabbed to death. Naoya remarks that Mai has the qualities of supporting her man, and Maki's mother responds that even though Mai has a similar face to Maki and acts tough, she is still a woman at the end of the day. Naoya meets with 2 other members of the clan. The first is Junichi Zenin, a special grade 1 sorcerer, and the second is Ogi Zenin, who is also a special grade 1 sorcerer. Ogi questions what Naoya has been doing all this time while his father is on the brink of death. Naoya boldly responds that it does not matter whether he visits his father or not because he will be the next head of the Zenin clan. He explains that there is no other suitable candidate for the position since his older brothers are failures. He adds that Ogi, despite being Naobito Zenin's younger brother, has not amounted to much, and that Ogi's daughter is also out of the question. Naoya comments that Junichi would not become the head of the clan either because his face looks bad, just like their other brother Toji. Junichi becomes furious at the insult and attempts to attack Naoya, but Naoya swiftly dodges the strike. Ogi places a sword at Naoya's throat, and Naoya urges them to get along since their father is still at death's door. Suddenly, Furudare announces that the head of the clan has passed away. Naoya smirks, confident that he will become the next head of the Zenin clan. Furudare begins reading Naobito's will in the presence of all his sons and his younger brother. The will states that Naoya Zenin will be the 27th head of the Zenin clan and will inherit all the family's assets, including the cursed tools stored in the Tokyo Prefectural Jujutsu High School and the Zenin family's cursed warehouse. However, there is a condition that Naoya must receive approval from either Ogi Zenin or Junichi Zenin before taking over the duties of the head of the clan. Naoya becomes frustrated that he needs approval before assuming the position. Furudare then reveals shocking news that if Satoru Gojo has died or become mentally incapacitated, a written agreement with Toji Fushiguro would allow Megumi Fushiguro to join the Zenin clan and become the head of the Zenin clan and inherits all the assets. Naoya is stunned by this revelation and demands to know Megumi's whereabouts. Maki's mother informs him that Megumi is searching for Yuji across Tokyo. Naoya questions who Yuji is, and she explains that Yuji is Sukuna's vessel. Naoya declares that he will inform the higher-ups of his intention to kill Sukuna's vessel and decides to eliminate Megumi as well. He acknowledges that Tokyo has become a realm of demons and admits that it does not matter to him how people die. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Yuki, who apologizes for acting so late. She explains that her situation had worsened, leaving her with no choice but to watch from the sidelines. She clarifies that she is not necessarily on their side and states that her goal is to eradicate all cursed spirits from the world. Yuki decides to confront Tengen and asks what Yuji plans to do next. Meanwhile, Yuji sits alone feeling terrible about everything that has happened. Choso approaches him and asks about his injuries. Yuji responds that he is fine despite being hit by a black flash and assumes that Sukuna's power is helping him recover. He adds that Sukuna's strength has been growing rapidly. Choso advises Yuji not to worry about him and urges him to return to Jujutsu High. He informs Yuji that he will collect the remains of Choso and the rest of his brothers. Yuji explains that he is not worried about Choso, but is concerned that Sukuna is plotting something involving Megumi. He expresses no interest in returning to Jujutsu High and feels depressed, blaming himself for the deaths of so many people. He recalls Megumi's words about how it would feel if someone he saved caused more deaths in the future. Yuji admits that he can no longer stay with everyone. Choso questions if Yuji is truly okay with this decision, and Yuji feels guilty for killing Choso's brothers. Choso reassures him that it is fine and explains that it was a misunderstanding. He adds that his other brothers would feel the same way, and that brotherhood is not not about forgiveness, but about understanding. Yuji decides to go out and take care of as many cursed spirits as possible. Meanwhile, Yuji goes to the middle of the bridge and starts clapping continuously. Suddenly, two massive cursed spirits emerge from the water, and Yuji notices them. As the cursed spirits charge at him, Yuji decides to run away from the cursed spirits, and all the curses begin following him. Suddenly, a cursed spirit jumps in front of him, but Yuji swiftly escapes. The entire area becomes filled with cursed spirits as Yuji continues running toward Choso, just as they planned. Choso uses his piercing blood technique to kill one of the cursed spirits. Suddenly, another cursed spirit appears, and Choso calls out to Yuji. Yuji strikes the cursed spirit with a powerful punch that sends it crashing into the wall. The cursed spirit fades away, and Choso becomes impressed with Yuji's unreal physical strength. Choso recalls how impressed he was when they first fought, and notices that Yuji has started combining his cursed energy with his physical strength. He observes that Yuji has become a demon god after fighting Mahito, and remarks that Yuji is as impressive as ever. Choso calls him little brother. Yuji becomes confused and asks why Choso is still calling him little brother. Choso explains that he will continue calling him little brother and urges him to recollect his past memories. He questions if Yuji's father also had stitches on his forehead. Suddenly, Naoya Zenin interrupts their conversation and asks about Megumi's whereabouts. Yuji becomes shocked to see someone in Tokyo, and Naoya starts looking around for Megumi, wondering if Megumi is a really slow person. Yuji becomes confused about whether Naoya is talking about Megumi Fushiguro. Naoya asks why they did not decide to run away from him, and Yuji becomes even more confused about why they would need to run. Naoya informs Yuji that his death sentence is back on now that Satoru Gojo is gone. Choso becomes irritated upon hearing about Yuji's death sentence. Naoya remarks that he does not care about Yuji or Choso, and that his only concern is finding Megumi. However, he decides to deal with Yuji first. Yuji questions why Naoya is so focused on Megumi. Naoya confidently states that he will kill Megumi and that Megumi needs to write something down before doing so. Suddenly, Naoya appears between them, and both Yuji and Choso are shocked by his speed. Naoya first strikes Yuji in the face, and Choso attempts to punch him, but Naoya counters with his own attack. Yuji follows up by trying to attack Naoya from behind, but Naoya uses his projection technique to dodge both of their attacks. Yuji notices that Naoya is incredibly fast, but feels something strange about his speed. Choso guesses that it might be a cursed technique. Naoya becomes surprised that Sukuna's vessel immediately attacked him even after being punched, and comments that Yuji is tougher than he expected. He wonders who Choso really is and decides to increase his speed to the maximum level. Suddenly, all of them sense an overwhelming presence around them. Yuji initially thinks it might be Gojo, but quickly realizes that it is not his sensei. Suddenly, Yuta Okkotsu appears and states that they are not alone in Tokyo. Yuji wonders who Okkotsu is, and Choso understands that Okkotsu has come to execute Yuji. Okkotsu places his leg on the edge of the bridge, and the sheer strength of his action causes the bridge to collapse to the ground. Both Yuji and Choso are completely shocked by this. Okkotsu starts walking slowly toward them, and Yuji feels a sense of danger. Choso asks if Okkotsu is Yuji's executioner. Suddenly, Naoya interrupts their conversation and explains that he is on Okkotsu's side to kill Yuji Itadori. He questions if his name is Yuta Okkotsu. Yuji recalls the second year that Fushiguro mentioned, and remembers that Okkotsu is a special grade sorcerer just like Gojo. Okkotsu becomes confused about who Naoya is, and Naoya introduces himself as Maki's cousin. He assures Okkotsu that he will not interfere with his goal of killing Itadori. Choso urges Yuji to run away from them, and thinks to himself that Naoya Zenin has a speed-type cursed technique, and that playing chase with Naoya would be dangerous. He decides to handle Naoya by himself. Yuji worries about Choso and asks if he will be alright on his own. Choso assures him that he will be fine since Okkotsu is not after him. He knows Yuji would feel bad fighting human sorcerers and requests Yuji to focus only on running away from Okkotsu. He warns that Yuji could die if he fights Okkotsu since he is as powerful as Gojo. Naoya requests Okkotsu not to inform anyone about Itadori's death if he kills him, as he wants to use him as bait to meet someone else. Naoya thinks to himself that he prefers not to mention Megumi's name as it could cause trouble. Okkotsu agrees to his request and suggests that Naoya take care of Choso. Meanwhile, Choso begins charging up for piercing blood, but Naoya Zenin charges at him and kicks him in the stomach. Okkotsu starts running toward Yuji as planned and reaches him in a matter of seconds. Yuji is shocked that Okkotsu closed the distance so quickly while still holding a katana. Okkotsu notices that Yuji is also fast, as his initial plan was to take him out in his first rush. Meanwhile, Choso realizes that his opponents might have guessed his intention to block Okkotsu, and suddenly he gets hit by Naoya Zenin from behind. Before Choso can react, Naoya appears in front of him and notices that Choso can use blood manipulation technique. Naoya wonders why Choso has the Kamo family blood manipulation technique and explains that blood manipulation is not a frightening technique except for piercing blood, which requires convergence and charging up. Naoya becomes confident that he can handle Choso and declares that their duel is a checkmate and that Choso will die here. Choso boldly responds that he will not let Naoya leave alive after trying to hurt his little brother. Naoya replies that he is simply warning Choso of the dangers if he chooses to fight him. Meanwhile, the scene shifts back to the fight between Okkotsu and Yuji. Yuji jumps to the back of a flipped car and Okkotsu tries to slash him with his katana, but Yuji swiftly dodges the attack. Okkotsu is in disbelief that he missed his strike and notices that Yuji has reflexes similar to Maki. Yuji punches the car toward Okkotsu and quickly gets inside as he knows he cannot escape from Okkotsu out in the open. To his surprise, the car gets punched back at him. Okkotsu notices Yuji's surprise at his strength, even though he does not look like a power-type fighter. Yuji senses an immense amount of cursed energy inside Okkotsu and understands that he compensates for his lack of physical power with cursed energy reinforcement. Yuji remarks that Okkotsu is the exact opposite of himself. Okkotsu responds that he has more cursed energy than Gojo and explains that Gojo-sensei is far superior because Gojo loses almost no cursed energy when using his 6 eyes, while he might run out of cursed energy. Okkotsu decides not to waste any more time talking and dashes at Yuji with incredible speed. Yuji is surprised by his speed. He notices that Okkotsu constantly surges his body and katana with cursed energy. Yuji understands that the biggest problem is not reading his opponent's movements, but the fact that Okkotsu's attacks could be decisive. He knows he must restrict the damage to a minimum. Yuji declares that he is not ready to die yet. However, Okkotsu continues attacking Yuji with his katana, and Yuji knows he must do something about the weapon. Yuji plans to create some distance and jumps into a car to grab a knife. Okkotsu follows him and attempts to slash him, but Yuji blocks the attack with the knife. Okkotsu becomes curious about where Yuji got the knife and quickly understands that he found it in the car. He realizes that the knife is not a special cursed tool and does not see it as a threat. Yuji tries to counterattack, but Okkotsu blocks it with ease. Yuji decides to overcome his fear of closing the distance and starts imbuing the knife with cursed energy. He recalls how Gojo once told him that he is still not ready to fully control his cursed energy. Okkotsu strikes again, and Yuji struggles to block the attack effectively as his control over cursed energy remains incomplete. Okkotsu observes that Yuji is too focused on the katana and delivers a powerful kick to his stomach. Yuji is stunned by the sheer force of the kick and realizes that even a simple forward kick from Okkotsu is incredibly strong. Okkotsu follows up with another attack, and this time he breaks the knife and successfully slashes through Yuji's stomach. Despite the injury, Yuji manages to trap the katana with his leg and breaks it into 2 pieces. He kicks Okkotsu away, forcing him to slide back. Okkotsu acknowledges that this fight will not be easy, as Yuji is a student of Gojo. Yuji feels a slight boost in confidence as both of them are now unarmed. He notices that his wound is deep, but his vital organs are still intact. Suddenly, Rika grabs Yuji by the head from behind, and Yuji is caught off guard by this unexpected turn of events. Okkotsu calmly explains to Rika that they are just playing and asks her to hold Yuji for him. Yuji struggles to escape from Rika's grip as he finds her strength overwhelming. He wonders if Rika is a Shikigami. Before he can react, Okkotsu pierces his heart with the broken katana. Sukuna is shocked by this move, but then smirks as he begins to understand Okkotsu's true plan. Meanwhile, the scene shifts back to the fight between Choso and Naoya Zenin. Naoya appears behind Choso and touches him, causing Choso to freeze for a moment. Naoya takes advantage of this and delivers a powerful kick that sends Choso crashing into the wall. Choso is still unable to figure out Naoya's curse technique and understands that Naoya will not reveal it since he is already dominating the fight. Choso struggles to converge his blood as he cannot control the blood outside his body. Naoya questions Choso's identity and admits that he is tougher than expected. Choso responds that he is the oldest of all 10 siblings and activates his flowing red scale stack technique to enhance his speed. Naoya clarifies that he is asking Choso about his cursed technique and why his body is so tough. Suddenly, Naoya uses his projection technique to appear behind Choso, but this time Choso reacts to his action and attempts to attack him. The reason he manages to respond on time is his flowing red scale technique, which enhances his dynamic visual activity. However, Naoya successfully dodges the attack and throws Choso away. He smirks and explains that he always acts on the assumption that his opponent will counter. Choso suddenly notices a wound on his stomach, and blood begins pouring out of the stomach. Naoya brings out a knife and remarks that he always prefers to use a weapon against his opponent. He knows that Choso can use his blood manipulation technique to stop the bleeding, but also understands that Choso cannot fight effectively while focusing on the bleeding. Choso realizes that Naoya is fully prepared for the fight. Naoya remarks that it is not cool for a sorcerer to carry a weapon and requests him to keep it a secret. He explains that sorcerers who rely on weapons to win are pathetic and criticizes his older brothers for showing off their weapon. He mentions how they always complained about Toji Zenin. Choso questions if Naoya Naoya truly hates his brothers, and Naoya confirms that he does. He states that there is no point in having older brothers if they are inferior to their younger siblings, and comments that his older brothers should hang themselves. Choso reflects that the reason Naoya is so strong might be because of his brothers. Naoya becomes confused by this statement, and Choso explains that older brothers are role models for their younger siblings. He adds that if an older brother takes the wrong path, the younger brother can avoid it, and vice versa. He questions, what if Naoya is strong because his older brothers are weak? Choso answers Naoya's earlier question about why he is tough by explaining that he kept making mistakes because he had no one to guide him. He shares that he always wanted to walk ahead of his little brothers, and that is what made him strong. Suddenly, a large amount of blood pours out of Choso, and Naoya is shocked that he is still alive after such massive blood loss. It is revealed that death paintings have mixed blood from cursed spirits and humans, which gives them the special ability to convert cursed energy into blood. As long as they have cursed energy, they cannot die from blood loss. Choso uses his blood to force Naoya away, and Naoya loses sight of him. Naoya becomes confused by the slow speed of the attack and assumes that Choso might be dying from blood loss. Suddenly, Choso emerges from nowhere and uses his piercing blood technique to attack. Naoya barely dodges the attack, but notices massive amounts of blood slowly flowing toward him. He knows he cannot let the blood touch him. Suddenly, Choso attempts to kick him. Naoya senses the attack and blocks it, but feels his legs becoming heavy. He notices blood stains on his clothes and realizes that they are making his movements harder to control. Choso begins charging up by collecting his blood to prepare another piercing blood attack and confidently declares that this is checkmate. Naoya questions if Choso is certain about this and thinks to himself that his projection technique can trace movement in 24 frames per second, so he has no problem moving. Both prepare to attack, and Naoya charges at Choso but becomes confused why Choso does not release his technique yet. Suddenly, Choso uses his Supernova technique instead of piercing blood. Supernova is Choso's ultimate attack, developed after honing his curse technique for 150 years. The attack pierces through Naoya's body, and Choso wonders why Naoya never liked his brothers. Suddenly, Okkotsu appears carrying Yuji's corpse, and Choso is horrified to see his little brother dead. Without wasting a moment, Okkotsu strikes Choso down and notices that Naoya is severely injured. Naoya Zenin feels that Okkotsu is looking down on him, and suddenly he starts feeling the effects of poison. He becomes shocked that a blood manipulation technique could poison someone and understands that Choso is a fully fleshed curse and that his body is rejecting non-human blood. Okkotsu offers to heal Naoya using his reverse curse technique, and in return requests that Naoya inform the higher-ups about Yuji's death. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Jin, who is Yuji's father. Mr. Itadori calls out to his son, and Jin warns that he will leave if he complains about his wife again. Mr. Itadori urges him to give up on his wife and warns that continuing the relationship could lead to his death. Jin asks him not to talk about such things in front of his son, as babies might remember more than what people think. Mr. Itadori becomes furious and reflects on how Jin always wanted a child, even though it did not happen with Kaori. Before he can finish his sentence, Jin's wife interrupts the conversation. She has stitches on her forehead and comments that she does not understand what her father-in-law is talking about. Suddenly, Yuji wakes up and becomes confused about why he is still alive. Okkotsu feels relieved that his reverse curse technique worked and explains that Gojo had told him to watch over Yuji when they met overseas around September. He reveals that the attempt to kill Yuji was all an act. Yuji becomes confused about why Okkotsu needed to put on an act, and Okkotsu begins recounting his conversation with Gojo. Gojo had requested Okkotsu to look after the first-year and second-year students if anything happened to him, and mentioned that the third-year student, Hakari, would be fine. Okkotsu had been perplexed by Gojo's words and asked if he meant that he was getting a girlfriend. Gojo jokingly commented that Okkotsu was being a comedian. Okkotsu had expressed disbelief that anything could happen to Gojo since he is the strongest of all sorcerers. Gojo had explained that he was concerned about Yuji and revealed that Yuji was also up for secret execution just like Okkotsu. He had requested Okkotsu to especially look after Yuji. Gojo had also asked about Miguel's whereabouts, and Okkotsu had responded that Miguel did not want to meet him. The scene shifts back to the conversation between Yuji and Okkotsu. Okkotsu explains his reason for putting on an act and reveals that he did not want another executioner to come after Yuji. He shares that he had to enter a binding vow to gain approval as Yuji's executioner from the higher-ups. Yuji questions why he is still alive, and Okkotsu explains that he used his reverse curse technique to heal him while stopping his heart at the same time. He adds that not many people know he can use positive energy directly and output it. Okkotsu reflects that this is the second time Yuji's death has been staged, and acknowledges that the higher-ups might eventually discover the truth, but for now, they will consider the death sentence complete. Yuji asks why Okkotsu wants to save him, and Okkotsu responds that Yuji is important to people who are important to him. He shares that he once had a power he could not control and initially thought it was forced upon him, but later he embraced that strength. Okkotsu tells Yuji that he is not to blame for everything, but Yuji insists that it does not matter whether it is his fault or not. He feels terrible remembering the Shibuya incident. Suddenly, someone calls out to him, and Yuji turns to see Megumi Fushiguro. Fushiguro requests them to return to Jujutsu High and informs them that the barrier around the school is loosening. He explains that it will not be a problem to get inside as long as no one sees Yuji's face, and mentions that they can rejoin with the other students. Yuji suddenly shouts to stop talking and pleads with him not to act like nothing happened. Okkotsu recalls how Yuji mentioned that he still cannot die yet, and understands that Yuji might not be sure whether he deserves to live. He realizes that this uncertainty might be why Yuji held back while fighting him. Yuji admits that many people have died because of him. Fushiguro responds that it is their fault and urges Yuji not to selfishly give up on his own. Yuji knows that Fushiguro would try to comfort him. Fushiguro explains that they are not heroes fighting for justice, but jujutsu sorcerers. He adds that no one can truly judge them and that they must continue fighting to prove their worth. He reminds Yuji that they do not have the luxury of thinking only about themselves and urges him to save people. Yuji comments that Megumi Fushiguro might suffer if he stays around. Fushiguro requests him to start helping others by saving him and reveals that Noritoshi Kamo has made plans for those involved with Jujutsu to face off in a culling game. He shares that his sister Tsumuki is trapped in the culling game and begs for Yuji's strength to save her. Yuji suddenly remembers his grandfather's last words to always help people since he is a strong kid. He explains that Sukuna is plotting something involving Fushiguro and reveals that Sukuna took over his body in Shibuya because he ate all 10 fingers at once, bringing the total to 15. He adds that even if he ate the remaining 5 fingers in one go, Sukuna would not be able to take over his body. He requests Okkotsu to kill him if Sukuna ever switches with him again, since Okkotsu has the strength to do so. Okkotsu agrees to his request, and Yuji asks about their next step. Fushiguro begins explaining the plan and states that they need to return to Jujutsu High to contact Master Tengen. He explains that they need information on how to remove the seal on the prison realm to free Gojo. He also mentions that they need to uncover Noritoshi Kamo's real objectives and future goals. He emphasizes that Master Tengen is the only one who can answer these questions and fix the situation. He describes the Culling Game as jujutsu terrorism that has never happened before in history. Yuji guesses that Tsukumo might have answers to these questions. Fushiguro responds that he already spoke to her and that she suggested contacting Tengen to get the answers. Fushiguro mentions that Tsukumo is hiding in Jujutsu High. Yuji wonders why she has to hide, and Fushiguro explains that Tsukumo wants to avoid the higher-ups. However, there is a problem with their plan, as all the 1,000 doors in the barrier continuously shuffle, and only one leads to the tomb of the Star Corridor, where Master Tengen resides. Yuji understands that they cannot contact Master Tengen if they do not pick the right door. Suddenly, he remembers Kugisaki and asks Fushiguro about her well-being. Fushiguro remains silent, unable to respond. Yuji understands the reason for his silence and becomes agitated. Suddenly, Choso interrupts their conversation and explains that there is a way to reach the barrier more easily. Fushiguro becomes flustered upon seeing Choso. Choso further explains that they can do the same thing Mahito did to collect Sukuna's fingers and the death painting wombs. They head to Jujutsu High to meet with Maki, and Okkotsu becomes excited to see Maki and asks if she is okay to move around. Maki responds that she has no problem. Yuki explains that Maki's physical toughness through heavenly restriction saved her life and adds that even a reverse curse technique could not heal burn scars. Maki questions Fushiguro about Master Tengen's barrier, but before Fushiguro can explain, Choso steps in to share his plan to locate Master Tengen. He devises a plan to use the remains of his 6 younger brothers, which are stored in a warehouse located between the door and the tomb of Master Tengen. He adds that the side effect of his cursed technique through his brothers should provide them with guidance. Yuki feels relieved that they have a lead to find Master Tengen's location. Maki suddenly questions who Choso is. Yuji requests everyone to think of Choso as his older brother, and the group begins heading out. Out of nowhere, Choso senses something and guides everyone to a door where his brothers are stored. They open the door and are shocked to find large trees inside. Yuki informs them that there is an elevator to the tomb deep within the trees, and they all start moving forward. Suddenly, Choso stops at the warehouse, and Yuji calls out to him. Choso promises to return to retrieve his brothers. After a while, Yuji notices bloodstains, and Yuki recalls the incident that happened 11 years ago when Toji Zenin attacked Jujutsu High. She explains that this was when everything began to distort. Okkotsu becomes curious about what Yuki is talking about. They finally reach Master Tengen's tomb, but the place is completely empty. Everyone is stunned to find nothing inside. Yuki explains that Tengen is rejecting them. She believes that Tengen prefers not to interfere with the world, but thought she could at least meet him since the six eyes are sealed. She wonders if Tengen is rejecting only her and not the others. Okkotsu urges them to head back since Tsumiki does not have much time. Suddenly, a voice speaks, and Master Tengen emerges. He expresses his pleasure in meeting the child of Michizane's descendant, referring to Okkotsu, the death painting womb, referring to Choso, and finally Sukuna's vessel. Everyone is shocked to see that Tengen looks completely different from what they expected. Yuki feels slightly agitated that Tengen does not greet her, and Tengen calmly states that this is not the first time they have met. Yuki questions why Tengen chose to close off the tombs of the corridor. Tengen explains that he was concerned they might be associated with Kenjaku, since he has no power to see into the human heart. Yuki becomes confused about who Kenjaku is, and Tengen clarifies that Kenjaku is the true name of the sorcerer inhabiting Suguru Geto's body, and that he was also once known as Noritoshi Kamo. Suddenly, Yuji interrupts their discussion and asks why Tengen looks so strange. Fushiguro silently thinks that Yuji has the guts to cut off such an important conversation, and Tengen explains that even though he is immortal, he is not immune to aging, and that they would look like him after 500 years. He further reveals that 11 years ago, he failed to merge with his star plasma vessel. As a result, his aging began to accelerate, and his self-awareness as an individual started to diminish. He adds that his very existence became one with the world itself. Yuki realizes that there was no other star plasma vessel, and Okkotsu states that they are here to ask about Kenjaku's objectives and how to open the prison realm. He requests Tengen to provide answers to their questions. Tengen expresses his willingness to answer, but adds a condition that two of them, among Okkotsu, Yuki, and Choso, must stay to serve as his guards. Okkotsu becomes confused about why Tengen needs guards when he is immortal. Maki questions if Tengen is worried about the seal. Yuki becomes furious that Tengen is expecting them to make a promise without knowing what they are agreeing to, and demands to know why or how long they need to do it. Tengen agrees to provide some information and begins speaking about Kenjaku. Tengen explains that Kenjaku's main objective is to force the evolution of all human beings across Japan. Fushiguro responds that he is aware of this and asks why Kenjaku does not use his barrier at Shibuya to turn everyone in Japan into sorcerers using idol transfiguration. Tengen explains that Kenjaku lacks the cursed energy to do so, and that there is a major issue with the process. Whenever Kenjaku uses his supreme art technique, the cursed energy does not return to him. Uzumaki, triggering an evolution in each individual with a cursed technique, is incredibly inefficient. Tengen reveals a startling truth that Kenjaku's chosen method of evolution involves merging humankind with himself. Yuji asks if such a thing is truly possible, but does not fully understand what Tengen is explaining. Fushiguro states that it should be impossible except for a star plasma vessel. Tengen responds that it used to be impossible, but after his evolution over the past 11 years, it is now possible to merge him with others. Choso becomes confused about how Tengen could merge with others since he is only one person. Tengen explains that he is now the world itself, and that what they see at this moment is not his true form. He reveals that his evolved soul exists all around the world. A human who merges with Tengen transforms into something greater than a sorcerer, becoming a new being that both exists and does not exist at the same time. Tengen explains that he is using his barrier techniques to control himself and his form even after evolving. He warns that if humankind evolves and even one individual loses control, the entire world would come to an end. Yuki interrupts the discussion and asks why Kenjaku would want to do such a thing. Tengen explains that if there were no boundaries between individuals, evil would spread instantly. He reveals that the impurity of 100 million people in Japan would flood the world, and the same disaster that happened to Tokyo would happen to the entire world. Yuji asks why Kenjaku wants to do this, and Tengen admits that he does not know since he cannot read human hearts. Maki asks why Tengen cannot refuse to merge, and Tengen reveals that he is now more of a cursed spirit than a human being, which makes him a target for cursed spirit manipulation techniques. Everyone is shocked to learn that Kenjaku could use his cursed spirit manipulation to take over Tengen. They begin to understand why Tengen's main body is rejecting everything and why he needs guards to protect him. Tengen explains that Kenjaku is the second most powerful barrier technique user after him, and worries that Kenjaku could undo the seals on the tomb. Yuki wonders why Kenjaku is acting now after being a sorcerer for 1,000 years and could have merged with him earlier. Tengen explains that the six eyes and the star plasma vessel are connected by fate. Kenjaku had already lost twice to previous six eyes sorcerers. The second time, he took no chances and killed the star plasma vessel along with the six eyes sorcerer within a month of their birth. However, on the day of merging, the star plasma vessel and the six eyes appeared again. Kenjaku eventually decided to seal them rather than kill them, since no two six eyes sorcerers could exist at the same time. Something unexpected happened exactly 11 years ago when Toji Zenin intervened with the merging of the star plasma vessel. Fushiguro and Maki do not understand why Toji Zenin is special, and Tengen explains that Toji was physically gifted through heavenly restriction and had no cursed energy at all. He was a human being who escaped fate through the power of restriction and destroyed their destinies. And suddenly, all the pieces fell into place for Kenjaku's plan, except for the prison realm. Tengen informs that Kenjaku even acquired the prison realm 6 years ago. Fushiguro asks why Kenjaku needs to conduct the Culling Game, and Tengen explains that the Culling Game is similar to breaking the body prior to merging. It is impossible to merge himself with anyone other than the star plasma vessel, and the Culling Game uses the cursed energy of the players, along with barriers in a ritual to convey human beings to the other side. Through this ritual, Kenjaku will begin merging with Tengen. Tengen explains that in order to perform such a ritual, Kenjaku had to undertake a few binding vows. The first vow is that Kenjaku cannot be the master of the game, but this does not work in their favor, since killing Kenjaku would not stop the Culling Game. The second vow is that the game will continue until all the players are dead, or all the participants refuse to play but still die. This is enforced by the clause long-lasting, which ensures that nothing can interrupt the ritual. However, they can still use 100 points from a player to negotiate with the game master to add a new rule to the Culling Game. Okkotsu understands that they have no choice but to participate in the Culling Game and add a new rule that would allow Tsumiki and others who are unwilling to participate to leave the game. Fushiguro mentions that freeing Gojo could settle everything on its own. Suddenly, Tengen urges them to decide who will stay. Both Choso and Yuki volunteer to stay and guard Tengen from Kenjaku. Choso explains that Yuji needs the help of either Okkotsu or Yuki and shares his reason for staying. He believes there is a high chance Kenjaku will come for Tengen and is willing to risk his life to kill Kenjaku since it would mean salvation for his brothers. Yuki explains her reason for staying and says that she has much to discuss with Tengen. She asks Okkotsu if he is okay with it, and Okkotsu gladly agrees. Tengen thanks them for agreeing to protect him and brings out the back of the prison realm and explains that this is necessary for freeing Gojo. Nobody was aware of the existence of the back of the prison realm. Tengen reveals that the front of the prison realm used to be outside his barrier and that he tried to hide the existence of the back by sealing it. However, Kenjaku somehow found the prison realm. Yuji asks if the back of the prison realm is like a back gate, and Tengen confirms this. Yuji wonders if they can unseal Gojo using it, but Tengen explains that it is not possible since only Kenjaku can do that, since he is the bearer of the front. Breaking the prison realm requires either the inverted spear of heaven, which nullifies cursed techniques, or the black rope, which disrupts and cancels cursed techniques. Tengen reveals that Gojo destroyed or sealed the inverted spear of heaven 11 years ago during his fight with Toji Zenin, and also got rid of the black rope last year. Both Fushiguro and Yuji are shocked by Gojo's actions. Okkotsu explains that he went to Africa to retrieve the remaining black rope from Miguel, but it was a fruitless effort since no more rope exists. Yuki believes there must be another way to open the back of the prison realm. Tengen reveals that there is a player in the Culling Game who is a sorcerer from 1,000 years ago. She calls herself an angel, and her real name is Hana Kurusu. Tengen reveals that they can use Angel's help since her curse technique allows her to extinguish any other cursed technique. Fushiguro wonders if they can really unseal Gojo using Kurusu's cursed technique and asks if Tengen knows her location. Tengen confirms that Kurusu's technique can release Gojo and reveals that she is in the colony on the east side of Tokyo. He explains that he cannot provide more details since the barrier is rejecting him and begins describing the colonies where the Culling Game will take place. There are 10 colonies across Japan connected by barriers that form a line to send humans from one end to the other. Yuki understands that Hokkaido is not included as a colony because the Jujutsu Society's barrier has already established it as a vast sacred area. Fushiguro asks how long the ritual will last, and Tengen estimates that 2 months should be enough depending on the game's progression. And Tengen explains the first rule of the Culling Game, which states that after awakening a cursed technique, the player must declare their participation in a colony of their choice within 19 days. They know that the sorcerers were awakened on October 31st, and the current date is November 9. Fushiguro realizes that Tsumiki has exactly 15 days left to declare her participation. The second rule states that any player who breaks the first rule by not participating will be subjected to cursed technique removal. Fushiguro tries to confirm if this means the players will die if they refuse to participate, and Tengen confirms it. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Shoko, who tries to figure out what cursed technique removal means based on the second rule. After some brainstorming, she concludes that something will happen to the player's brain, causing them to die if they refuse to participate. The scene shifts back to Maki, who understands that sorcerers like her are not at risk since she does not possess a cursed technique. She wonders what would happen to Panda since he does not even have a brain, and Tengen explains the third rule, which states that non-players who enter a colony will become players upon entry and will be considered to have have declared participation in the Culling Game. Yuji asks what happens to civilians already inside the barrier, and Tengen explains that they will be given a chance to exit the game. He adds that there is no clear rule about entering or exiting the colonies, and that from the start of the game, players are given the objective of exiting the barriers to stimulate competition, and the barriers are designed to confine players under the premise that they entered of their own free will. Tengen continues with the fourth rule, which states that players score points by ending the lives of other players. The fifth rule explains that the points for each player's death are determined by the game master based on the value of the player. Sorcerers are worth 5 points, while non-sorcerers are worth only 1 point. Fushiguro becomes lost in thought as he processes all this information and eventually asks about the game master. Tengen explains that the game master is actually a shikigami called Kogane, and that each player receives their own Kogane. He clarifies that Kogane functions more like a program than a traditional game master. Yuji struggles to keep up with all the new information. Tengen explains the sixth rule, which allows a player to use 100 points to add a new rule to the Culling Game, but existing rules cannot be removed. Fushiguro feels confident that they can find ways to counteract the rules. The seventh rule states that the game master must accept any newly proposed rule as long as it does not affect the long-lasting nature of the game. Choso wonders if the game is truly fair to everyone, and Tengen explains that all players are subject to strict rules, and even Kenjaku is not exempt. The eighth rule states that if a player's score remains the same for 19 days, they will be subjected to cursed technique removal, which means they will die. Yuji begins to feel terrible about the idea of having to kill people again, but Fushiguro reassures him that he has a few ideas on how they can clear the game without killing anyone. This concludes the information they have on the Culling Game. Maki decides to return to the Zenin Clan to collect cursed tools. She explains that the clan's cursed tools used to be stored at Jujutsu High, but after Gojo was sealed, both the Kamo and Zenin clans cleared out the warehouses. Maki mentions that she will retrieve the cursed tools from the Zenin clan since Fushiguro is now the new clan head. Yuji is shocked to hear this, and Fushiguro promises to explain the details later. Maki decides to find Panda and plans to explain all the details of the Culling Game to him. After retrieving the cursed tools, Yuta decides to enter a colony immediately to gather information before Tsumuki and Fushiguro participate in the game. Fushiguro expresses his gratitude to Okkotsu for his genuine effort to help his sister. Okkotsu assures him that he will avoid nearby colonies to prevent any chance of them having to fight each other. He also informs them that they will not be able to contact one another since the barrier might block phone signals. Suddenly, both Okkotsu and Yuji begin to consider how it might be safer for Fushiguro if Okkotsu stays near Yuji, since they are concerned that Sukuna might harm Fushiguro. However, they understand that it would be more efficient for Okkotsu to operate alone. Fushiguro reassures them not to worry and states that if Sukuna kills him, Okkotsu will just have to kill Yuji. Yuji becomes agitated hearing this, since their main goal is to prevent such a situation. Maki suggests recruiting Hakari, a suspended third-year student, since they are short on manpower and need as much help as possible. Yuji wonders if Hakari is really strong, and Okkotsu explains that Hakari is a bit moody, but when he gets worked up, he is even stronger than himself. Maki disagrees with Okkotsu, and they all begin heading out. Suddenly, Yuji turns back to thank Choso for helping them. Choso smiles and tells Yuji not to die. As Yuji walks away, Choso begins crying and reflects on how much his little brother has grown. Yuki notices this and asks if he is really crying. Choso denies it. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Takaba, who is trying his best to crack jokes, but realizes that his humor is not being well received by the audience. He becomes depressed, and the event manager grows frustrated with him. The manager questions how long Takaba plans to continue with his jokes and asks for his age. Takaba responds that he is 35 years old. The event manager advises him to consider another career, since people do not suddenly become funny, and suggests that comedy might not suit him. Ken overhears the conversation and comments that he does not dislike Takaba's jokes. He explains that there are always two types of comics in demand. The first type is comics who are genuinely funny, and the second type is comics who believe they are funny. He asks Takaba which category he falls into. With a shocking face, Takaba responds that he might be 50-50 in both categories, but then changes his answer to 70-30. The story shifts to the past when Principal Yaga was confined in a cell before becoming the principal of Tokyo Jujutsu High. Gakuganji interrogates him about how he created an artificial corpse that is self-sustaining. Typically, cursed corpses require cursed energy from a sorcerer, but Panda is the first corpse with its own cursed energy. Gakuganji informs him that the higher-ups have designated him as a special grade sorcerer and imposed an indefinite restraint on him out of fear that he might create an army of independent cursed corpses. Principal Yaga insists that he does not know how it happened. After a few days, he escapes from the prison and visits one of his cursed corpses. The cursed corpse notices how gloomy he looks and mentions that everyone is worried about him. It advises advises others to cheer him up and asks if it is a genius for coming up with the idea. Principal Yaga pets the cursed corpse and reveals that he will not be able to return anytime soon. He assures that Master Tengen protects the forest they are hiding in and that his mother will visit again. Principal Yaga opens the door of a tree and finds a large number of independent cursed corpses residing inside. Meanwhile, in the present, Panda is captured and held in an isolation chamber at Jujutsu High as bait to lure out Principal Yaga. Kusakabe uses his katana to cut Panda free as a favor to repay Principal Yaga. He asks Panda not to tell anyone that he helped him escape. The story shifts back to the past where Principal Yaga meets Kusakabe and his younger sister. Principal Yaga explains that the cursed corpse is not actually Kusakabe's nephew, but only contains his nephew's information. Kusakabe understands that people should move on after losing someone dear to them, but his sister cannot live without her son's support. The cursed corpse asks if the woman is its mother, and Principal Yaga confirms it. The cursed corpse then asks if it is a genius. The mother recognizes her son's mannerisms in the cursed corpse and runs out of her wheelchair to embrace it. She calls the cursed corpse Takeru repeatedly while holding it tightly. Principal Yaga cannot allow Takeru to live with his mother because Panda is not yet around, and the existence of a fully independent cursed corpse must remain a secret. Kusakabe apologizes and emotionally thanks Principal Yaga for doing this for his family. In the present, Principal Yaga is confronted by a masked sorcerer with a scar across his left eye. The sorcerer questions where he is going without any cursed corpses to back him up. Principal Yaga removes his jacket and replies that he is going to see his son. The masked sorcerer does not understand what he means, but informs him that he has been sentenced to death, and the only way to save himself is to reveal how to create independent cursed corpses. Principal Yaga comments that the sorcerer is getting pushy without Gojo around. The masked man agrees and reveals that he is accompanied by a veteran sorcerer. Suddenly, Gakuganji steps out with his guitar and after a brief fight delivers a fatal blow to Principal Yaga. He tells the masked sorcerer to leave the rest to him, and the sorcerer complies. Out of nowhere, Principal Yaga begins explaining how to create an independent cursed corpse. He reveals that soul information can be replicated from physical information and inputted into cursed corpse cores. These cores must contain 3 highly compatible souls that constantly observe each other. This is the only way the souls will stabilize and give rise to self-awareness and self-sustaining cursed energy. Gakuganji is shocked that Yaga is revealing this information now and asks why he did not try to live. Principal Yaga laughs and responds that it is a curse being passed on from him to Gakuganji. Suddenly, Panda arrives and is horrified to find Principal Yaga dead. Gakuganji throws away his weapon, expecting Panda to fight him, but Panda simply walks past him toward Principal Yaga without even looking at Gakuganji. Gakuganji asks why Panda does not fight for revenge. Panda explains that he is not like humans. He knows that both principals were not on bad terms. He comments that Gakuganji is like a fallen knife to him. Even so, Panda sheds tears for his father and tells Gakuganji to remember that even pandas cry. Meanwhile, the story shifts to Maki as she arrives at the Zenin Clan household to collect cursed tools. She is greeted by Naoya, who taunts her about the scars on her face and remarks that her wounds will never heal. Maki mocks him in return and points out that he was able to recognize her despite never caring about anyone but himself. Naoya demands to know what she is planning and calls her trash. He ridicules her for being unable to use cursed techniques or see cursed spirits. Naoya believes that Maki's only value was her attractiveness, and now that it is gone, he wonders if he should bully her as he used to. He questions if she is just going to follow Megumi, Fushiguro, and Okkotsu like a lapdog. Maki ignores him and heads underground. Maki's mother confronts her and reminds her that they cannot access the cursed tools without permission. Maki shows her the keys and explains that the head of the clan gave her permission to retrieve the tools. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Fushiguro before he officially becomes the head of the clan. Maki informed Fushiguro about Naobito's will, which named him as the next head of the Zenin clan. Although Fushiguro initially wanted to refuse, Maki insisted that he accept the position. She explained that becoming the clan head would allow him to inherit the family fortune and gain valuable information about the big 3 families and Jujutsu headquarters. Fushiguro suggested that Maki should become the head instead, but Maki firmly stated that no one would agree to it. She pointed out that Fushiguro had inherited the Zenin clan's prized 10 Shadows technique and achieved its domain expansion. She became frustrated with him for hesitating and demanded that he make up his mind. Fushiguro still did not want the position and asked if acceptance mattered if she became the head of the clan. He argued that she would still gain the resources. Maki responded that she did not believe she was capable of making the Zenin household a place where she and her sister Mai could belong. Fushiguro finally agreed to her request and became the head of the Zenin clan. Back in the present, Maki's mother screams at her to come back and demands to know why her daughter is always like this. She tells Maki to make her proud for once. Ignoring her mother, Maki continues to the doors of the cursed warehouse and unlocks them with the key. To her shock, shock, she finds her father Ogi Zenin waiting for her. The warehouse is completely empty, and Ogi reveals that he anticipated her move and disposed of all the cursed tools. Mai has been gravely injured and is bleeding from her abdomen. She calls Maki an idiot for coming, and Maki yells her sister's name in concern. Meanwhile, Junichi meets Naoya and explains that Fushiguro is the better choice for clan head because of his good relationships with Gojo and Noritoshi Kamo. However, Junichi refuses to allow an outsider to inherit the entire fortune. Naoya wonders why they do not simply get rid of Fushiguro, but Junichi explains that killing him outright would damage the Zenin clan's standing with the Gojo and Kamo clans. This would leave the Zenin clan vulnerable in the power vacuum left by Gojo. Naoya questions why they are acting now if that is the case. Junichi reveals that they are taking advantage of the notice from Jujutsu headquarters, which has deemed unsealing Gojo a crime. Naoya finds the plan amusing and comments that Ogi Zenin killing his own daughters will boost his credibility. He wonders if Ogi Zenin is truly okay with killing his own children, and Junichi reveals that the plan was Ogi Zenin's idea. He prepares his secret technique Falling Blossom Emotion, which envelops his body and sword with cursed energy to intercept enemy techniques. He prepares to use this technique in case Maki wields an unknown cursed tool. Maki uses Juzo Kumiya's masterpiece, which has the ability to absorb the impact of cursed energy and release it at the user's will. She wanted to take advantage of the fact that her father is unaware of the tool's special ability and make him engage in a combat and slash him after a few exchanges. Ogi Zenin questions if Maki knows why his older brother was chosen as the clan head instead of him. Maki responds that it is because his father is a terrible person who does not hesitate to kill his own family. Ogi Zenin unsheathes his blade while Maki flips Dragonbone into a reverse grip. She blocks his first slash and counters with an attack using the momentum of cursed energy shooting out from the back of her blade. His katana breaks and Maki gets behind him to deliver the finishing blow. With incredible reaction time, Ogi Zenin spins around and counters with his blazing curse technique. He cuts Maki down before the broken blade even hits the ground. Her injured eye is slashed, breaking her glasses, and her lower abdomen is severely wounded. Maki does not understand what happened until she realizes that his father's blade has been replaced by the flames of his cursed technique. As she falls defeated, Ogi Zenin sheds a tear and reveals that he could not become the clan head because his children are worthless. Ogi Zenin reflects on the reason Maki lost and believes it is because she misjudged his blade as broken. He remarks that he is a sorcerer and not a swordsman who fights fairly. He declares that Maki has no right to judge him since she is worthless. He repeats how he failed to become the head of the Zenin clan and reveals that it was not due to his cursed technique since his brother's technique does not have much history either. He admits that he is inferior to Nyobito Zenin in only one aspect, which is the quality of his children. He blames his daughters for holding him back his entire life. Mai responds that holding back each other is considered a virtue in their country. Ogi Zenin throws them down a flight of stairs into a large room and explains that the room is used for training or disciplining sorcerers and that the room is filled with grade 2 and lower grade cursed spirits. Ogi Zenin observes the cursed spirits holding back and explains that his presence is keeping them at bay. He warns that once he leaves, the cursed spirits will emerge to devour both of them. He mocks Maki's strength gained through heavenly restriction and claims that her strength is not special since other sorcerers can achieve the same by reinforcing their bodies with cursed energy. He bids them farewell and leaves immediately. Mai checks on her sister and places her hand on Maki's chest to see if she is alive. She notices that Maki's heart is still beating and praises her toughness. Mai reveals that she had already suspected this day would come and reaches into her mouth. Suddenly, Maki finds herself on a beach and sees Mai sitting beside her. Mai begins explaining her cursed technique and how she cannot create anything big or complicated. She informs Maki that she will use her construction technique to make something and that doing so will cost her life. Mai starts walking slowly toward the ocean and wishes Maki good luck. Maki tries to stop her and pleads with her to come back. Mai explains that twins are considered a curse among sorcerers and that one must offer something to gain something. She believes that suffering makes sorcerers stronger, but this rule does not apply to twins since cursed techniques treat them as a single individual. She knows that as long as she is around, Maki will never grow stronger. Maki tries to stop Mai from leaving and grabs her hand, but Mai slips away. Mai takes all the cursed energy between them and asks her big sister to promise to destroy everything. She hands Maki a small plant, and Maki recalls their childhood memories when they were happy. Maki wakes up from the dream and tries to wake Mai, but realizes she is gone. The cursed spirits begin approaching them, and Ogi Zenin suddenly stops in his tracks. He notices that all the cursed spirits have disappeared and is shocked to see his daughters still alive. Maki carries Mai's body and gently places it down. Ogi remembers a certain fear his body had forgotten and senses the same feeling he once felt from Toji Zenin. His eyes widen in shock as he immediately activates his innate technique, Blazing Courage, which coats his katana's broken blade in scorching flames and creates a circle of fire around him. He threatens to burn Maki with his own hands, but before he can act, Maki effortlessly slices his head off in an instant. Maki recalls her promise to Mai and resolves to fulfill it. Both Naoya and Jinchi hear the loud alarm and wonder what is happening. They head out to investigate and encounter young Ranta Zenin, who informs Jinchi that Maki has gone mad and killed her father. He adds that the Kukuru squad is currently dealing with her. Jinchi is shocked to learn that Oji Zenin was killed by his own daughter. The Kukuru unit has been dispatched to apprehend Maki, and Captain Nobuaki Zenin underestimates her strength. He assumes that Maki must have killed her father while he was sleeping or in a vulnerable state. He orders his men to capture Maki before he arrives and worries that Jinchi might blame him if his men are too slow. Despite his orders to capture her alive, the captain plans to finish Maki himself. It is explained that the Kukuru squad consists of Zenin Clan members without curse techniques and serves under Hei. The members dedicate their time to training in martial arts, and Maki herself was once enlisted in this organization before enrolling in Jujutsu High. The squad locates Maki, who is armed with 2 unidentified cursed tools, and decides to surround her completely. As they prepare to attack, Maki recalls Naoya questioning her plans and reflects that she should have followed a different path by giving up Jujutsu High and spending her time with Mai. The Kukuru unit launches their attack, but Maki remembers Mai's final request to destroy everything. Maki opens her eyes just as one of the men attempts to slash her with a katana. She evades the blade and swiftly cuts off both of the man's hands. She jumps over his back and cuts down several more men. She continues to eliminate every member of the Kukuru unit with brutal efficiency. When Captain Nobuaki arrives, he is horrified to see that all of his men have been reduced to bloody corpses. Maki senses a surge of cursed energy nearby coming from Chojuro Zenin. Suddenly, Maki is thrown into the air by gigantic hands that clap together in an attempt to crush her. The Nai squad arrives at the scene to assist. The Nai squad is the strongest Zenin unit composed entirely of semi-grade or higher-grade sorcerers certified by Jujutsu High. Maki breaks free from the clapping hands and dashes toward Chojuro Zenin to attack him. Chojuro dodges her strike and counters with a kick. The captain also attempts to slash her, but is stunned by her incredible speed that she is moving so fast even after being attacked by Chojuro's cursed technique. Maki kills both Chojuro and the captain with her cursed tools. Both men die in disbelief that this is the same Maki they once knew. Suddenly, Ranta uses his paralysis technique to immobilize Maki, while Jinchi charges at her to deliver the finishing blow. Maki struggles against the paralysis, and Ranta realizes that he cannot hold her for long. Maki successfully breaks free from the technique. Despite bleeding from his face, Ranta declares that they must kill Maki immediately, as she has become just like Toji Zenin. Jinchi uses his cursed technique to launch multiple punches at Maki. Ranta believes that Maki has been killed, but to his shock, she appears holding Jinchi's severed head. She then kills Ranta as well. Naoya, the head of the Hei squad, arrives at the scene and comments that Maki is a terrible person. He questions if she has a heart, and Maki responds that she does not, as her heart was taken away from her. The story shifts to Naoya Zenin's childhood, where he sees himself as a genius, destined to succeed his father as the next head of the Zenin clan. He is aware of a failure within the clan, who lacks even an ounce of cursed energy, and wonders how disheartened that person must feel. One day, he encounters Toji Zenin and is physically shaken by Toji's cold and indifferent eyes. Meanwhile, the scene shifts back to the fight between Naoya and Maki. Naoya launches a series of punches at Maki. She blocks all of his attacks, but Naoya suddenly grabs her hand and uses his projection technique to freeze her within a frame. He kicks her hard, sending her crashing to the ground. He charges at her with incredible speed and kicks her again, forcing her back to the ground. Naoya comments that Maki is nowhere near Toji Zenin in strength and calls it a sin that no one truly understood Toji's power. He believes that only Gojo recognized Toji's true strength. He continues his relentless assault and expresses his desire to become the strongest sorcerer like Gojo and Toji. Naoya keeps attacking Maki repeatedly, and she begins to realize that the fight is not going in her favor. She understands that his projection technique cannot violate the laws of physical trajectory, and that his speed is limited by the acceleration of his body when activating the technique. Naoya refuses to stop as he remembers his loss to Choso and does not want to experience defeat again. He charges at his maximum speed while Maki prepares for a head-on collision and takes the stance of the Shiranui Gata technique. It is explained that Maki gained a steel body when Mai sacrificed her life to free her sister from cursed energy. However, Maki has already lost a significant amount of blood during her fight with her father and the battle with the Hay Squad. She concludes that the fight with Naoya is not in her favor and smirks, welcoming him for a hug. Naoya touches her again, and Maki knows she must follow the trajectory of 24 frames per second or she will freeze for 1 second. Naoya charges at her with incredible speed again and mocks her for trying to bait him with a head-on attack, even if it means sacrificing her ribs. He calls her a fake replica of Toji. To his shock, Maki turns back to counterattack and reveals that she can see all 24 frames of his movements. Naoya continues to insist that Maki is nothing but a fake. Maki delivers a single devastating punch that smashes his face into the ground. She asks Naoya to repeat his last sentence. Maki goes to her mother and demands to know why she told her to come back earlier. Her mother is terrified at the sight of her daughter and pleads with her to stay away. Meanwhile, Naoya is still alive and feels relieved that Maki did not finish him off. He suddenly notices Maki's mother approaching with a knife in her hands, and her throat has already been slit and is bleeding heavily. Naoya struggles to control his cursed energy, but fails. Maki's mother stabs him in the back. As she collapses, she recalls the moments she shared with her daughters and feels grateful that she gave birth to them. Maki leaves the Zenin property carrying Mai's body. Momo arrives and is horrified to see her dear friend dead. She remembers warning Mai not to go to the Zenin Clan property and breaks down in tears. Maki hands her sister's body to Momo and begins to walk away. Momo calls out to Maki and asks what she is planning to do, but Maki does not respond. She silently walks away with Mai's blade in hand. On that day, 6 members of the Hay Squad and 21 members of the Kukuru unit were reported missing. Their bodies were later found, and their deaths were attributed to unnatural causes. No traces of cursed energy were detected at the scene. Days later, both the Kamo and Gojo clans proposed to the Jujutsu headquarters that the Zenin clan be removed from the 3 big family households. The commissioner of the Jujutsu headquarters decided to put the request on hold, and Fushiguro get Hakari's location from Master Tengen. Tengen explains that Hakari is making money by acting as a bookmaker for gambling matches between Jujutsu sorcerers, and that most of the spectators are non-sorcerers. Fushiguro becomes concerned that Hakari is violating Jujutsu Regulations Article 8, which requires Jujutsu to remain confidential. Tengen warns them to be cautious, as there might be curse users among the fighters. Both Yuji and Fushiguro prepare to find Hakari, and Yuji questions why they need to change their clothes. Fushiguro explains that Hakari was suspended for disputing with the higher-ups, and that now he is also violating Jujutsu school rules. He predicts that Hakari might run away if he realizes they are affiliated with the school. Yuji wonders if Hakari will actually help them, and Fushiguro admits that he is unsure, since Hakari might see them as enemies. He further adds that based on what he has heard from his senpais, Fushiguro believes that Hakari is not a good person. Both Yuji and Fushiguro enter the ground-level entrance of an abandoned parking garage and are confronted by a manager and a bodyguard. The bodyguard warns them to leave immediately or be beaten to a pulp. Yuji feels a bit agitated by the threat, but Fushiguro remains calm and states that he wants to participate in the gambling fights to earn money. The bodyguard attempts to punch Fushiguro, but stops at the last second. Fushiguro stares at him coldly, and the bodyguard explains that the first rule of the gambling fights is not to talk about them. He demands to know how Fushiguro learned about the matches. Fushiguro lies and claims that he heard about them from a man he killed a month ago. The manager assumes that Fushiguro killed Kondo, who has been missing for a month. Fushiguro offers to fight in Kondo's place, but warns the bodyguard that he might beat him up if his offer is not accepted. Yuji stays silent and begins to understand why Fushiguro is speaking so boldly. He realizes that this approach increases their chances of getting close to Hakari. The manager interrupts their argument and informs them that the boss has just called and agreed to Fushiguro's offer. However, there is a condition. Yuji must fight in the gambling match. Fushiguro knows that Yuji is better suited for the fight, and the manager explains that the boss does not like Fushiguro. Fushiguro noticing the cameras and accepts the condition. As they leave, Yuji worries that their bluffing might be too risky, but Fushiguro disagrees. He explains that a fight club using curse users likely has a high turnover rate. Despite the risks, they confirm that Hakari is nearby and watching them through the cameras. Fushiguro plans to infiltrate the fight club through the parking lot and advises Yuji to focus on the fight and begin investigating from the inside. He explains that he has only a 50% chance of getting in. Yuji questions why the odds are so low, and Fushiguro explains that Hakari is suspicious of him and there is a risk of being caught. He reminds Yuji that their main goal is to get Hakari's help with the Culling Game and that they must avoid getting on his bad side. Yuji checks his phone and notes that there are still 9 days left before the Culling Game begins. Fushiguro reflects on how much time they wasted fighting cursed spirits on their way. Yuji returns to the parking garage and meets the bodyguard. The bodyguard explains 2 rules for the fight. The first rule is that Yuji must not run away from the fight. The second rule is that he must not use any cursed techniques. Yuji assures him that he does not mind mind if his opponents use cursed techniques against him. The bodyguard explains that most spectators are non-sorcerers, and that using cursed techniques would make the fights less exciting. Yuji asks about the type of person the boss is, but the bodyguard avoids the question. Instead, he explains that there are two types of fights. The first is a real fight, and the second is a scripted fight written by Hakari. He advises Yuji to perform well, as it might convince Hakari to meet him. Yuji becomes excited and decides to put on a thrilling display of violence. The fighting stage is packed with spectators, and the floor has been removed in a way that allows the audience to watch the fight from above while the action takes place below. Yuji is initially shocked to see his opponent, but quickly becomes excited as he remembers that his main goal is to captivate the crowd. The announcer John Bobby welcomes everyone to the Gachinko Club tournament and begins introducing the fighters. He refers to Yuji as the dangerous Fireball Kid and reveals that his opponent is Panda. Meanwhile, Hakari monitors the fight from his office and comments that things are starting to feel boring. Kirara questions why he feels that way, and Hakari explains that predetermined fights are boring to watch. He confidently states that no one can beat Panda. Kirara glances at the monitor and asks if he is absolutely sure about that. Back in the ring, Yuji launches a series of attacks at Panda, and John Bobby enthusiastically declares that this is the best fight he has seen in his couple of weeks of experience. Both fighters trade fake blows while Yuji quietly asks Panda if he has met Hakari. Panda responds that he has not met him yet, but notes that Hakari does not seem suspicious of him. He warns Yuji to be cautious of the other third-year student. Panda then asks if Yuji is hiding the fact that he is a Jujutsu high student, and Yuji confirms it. Panda suggests that they wrap up the fight, and Yuji lands a powerful punch on him. Panda dramatically pretends to be badly injured and jokes that the animal welfare organization will not stand for this. Yuji thinks to himself that Panda is a terrible actor. The announcer declares Yuji as the winner of the fight. Meanwhile, Hakari becomes intrigued by Yuji's performance and calls his associate. He mentions that he can write an exciting script for Yuji and wants to do it immediately for the next fight. However, Kirara advises against it and calls the plan a dumb idea. The associate asks what they should do about Fushiguro, and Hakari instructs him to stay vigilant. He adds that Kirara will also assist with security. Hakari becomes increasingly excited about Yuji and remarks that he has not felt this thrilled since his ex-girlfriend maxed out all his credit cards. Meanwhile, Panda meets Fushiguro in a nearby forest and asks if he thinks Yuji could successfully meet Hakari. Fushiguro realizes that Panda still has not met Hakari. Panda explains that Hakari is always in the monitoring room, which makes it impossible for him to approach. Fushiguro wonders why Panda cannot meet Hakari, and Panda explains he gets pulled back every time he tries to run toward the door. He guesses that it might be Kirara's curse technique. Fushiguro wonders if Kirara is the third-year boy, and Panda confirms it. Fushiguro questions if this phenomenon only happens when Kirara is in the room. Panda responds that he is not sure since Hakari and Kirara are never apart. He shares how he tried to attract Hakari's attention by performing like a circus bear for the spectators, but failed. Panda feels confident that Yuji might convince Hakari with his friendly and charming nature, but worries that Yuji is terrible at lying. Fushiguro informs him that he gave Yuji some pointers on how to handle Hakari if they discover he is from Jutsu High. In the worst-case scenario, Hakari might throw Yuji out or call his bouncers. Panda suggests taking control of the guards when Yuji enters the monitoring room to ensure no interruptions during their conversation. Fushiguro decides to knock out the guards, but worries that Hakari might notice their plan through the security cameras. Panda assures him that he knows the locations of all the cameras and their blind spots, since he spends a lot of time around the building. Fushiguro asks how many sorcerers are in the building, and Panda replies that they only need to worry about Hakari and Kirara. Fushiguro feels confident about their plan, but remains cautious about Kirara's curse technique. He suggests giving up on Hakari if things go wrong. After winning another match in the Fight Club tournament, Yuji sends Fushiguro a text saying he is meeting Hakari at 1. Fushiguro immediately deletes the message from his phone. Meanwhile, Kirara brings Yuji to meet Hakari and nicknames him Yu. Kirara shares that Hakari repeated a year in junior high, and Yuji comments that Kirara seems more cheerful. Kirara responds that Hakari is feeling hot after a long time and that he loves when Hakari feels this way. Meanwhile, Fushiguro sneaks into a guard's shadow and chokes him unconscious. He tapes the guard's mouth and zip ties his hands. The second guard walks by without noticing, and Fushiguro quickly slides into his shadow and knocks him out with a triangle choke while staying in the camera's blind spot. At the same time, two guards notice Panda playing with a tire. One wonders if Panda would eat fish sausage, while the other recalls seeing him in the tournament. Panda finishes them off and eats the sausage. He meets Fushiguro on top of the building. Fushiguro worries that this might cause problems later, but Panda assures him it will be fine. They head to guard the door, but suddenly notice Kirara. Panda is shocked to see him, and Kirara remembers seeing Fushiguro with Yuji earlier. He realizes that they are all from Jujutsu High and decides to warn Hakari about the danger. Fushiguro Fushiguro summons his divine dog to stop Kirara, but after Kirara touches the Shikigami, it suddenly returns to Fushiguro and becomes attached to him. Fushiguro wonders why his divine dog was repelled, and Kirara recalls that he already marked Panda. Kirara starts heading toward the monitoring room, and Panda tries to convince him that they are not enemies. Kirara does not stop, and Panda is unable to get close to him. Fushiguro summons his divine dog to guard the door, and Kirara stops at his tracks. Fushiguro realizes that Kirara cannot reach the door either, and suddenly he himself is pulled toward his Shikigami. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Hakari, who asks Yuji if he would believe that he could earn 1 million yen by working just 1 hour a day. Yuji feels confused after hearing Hakari's statement and responds that it depends on the type of work. Hakari offers to provide details about the work if Yuji pays 200,000 yen. Yuji quickly realizes it is a scam, and Hakari admits that it is indeed a scam. He explains that many fools fall for such scams because of their shared passion for becoming wealthy. Yuji remains puzzled by the explanation, and Hakari elaborates that people often get carried away by their passion and make rash decisions. He adds that without passion in life, one cannot truly fall in love. Hakari mentions that he admires people with passion and asks if Yuji knows about the direct exchange of passion. Yuji hesitantly responds that it is a gamble. Hakari agrees and explains that life itself is a gamble. He recalls how his girlfriends dumped him because she hated his gambling habits. Hakari shares his belief that people who do not take big risks or know when to quit are cast aside by society. He claims that everyone gambles in some way and explains that people hate losing when they gamble, but not the act of gambling itself. Meanwhile, Yuji remembers Fushiguro's warning not to mention Jujutsu until the very end. Suddenly, Hakari's phone rings. He offers Yuji a drink, and Yuji accepts, but clarifies that he does not drink alcohol since he is underage. Hakari asks if Yuji knows that Gojo also dislikes alcohol. Yuji pauses for a moment and replies that he does not know who Gojo is. Hakari boldly states that there is no sorcerer who does not know about Gojo. Yuji is shocked and realizes that his plan has failed. Hakari immediately questions if Yuji is from Jujutsu High. Yuji tries to explain his reason for contacting him, but Hakari does not give him a chance. He throws a drinking glass at Yuji's face. Yuji deflects the glass, but Hakari activates his cursed technique and summons 2 tall sliding doors, attempting to trap Yuji between them. Yuji leaps above the horizontal doors and tries to speak, but Hakari continues his attack. Hakari reveals that a call from Kirara signals danger and kicks Yuji in the face. Yuji recalls Fushiguro's advice to only ask for Hakari's cooperation and headbutts him. Yuji tries again to request Hakari to listen, but Hakari refuses. Meanwhile, Kirara is at a deadlock with Panda and Fushiguro due to his technique. Fushiguro attempts to persuade him and explains that he is not from Jujutsu High, but needs their help. He warns that there is an unprecedented Jujutsu terrorism. Kirara responds that Jujutsu High deserves it since they abandoned them in the first place. Fushiguro realizes that Kirara remains skeptical and asks what happened between them and the higher-ups. Panda explains that the conservative members of the higher-ups prefer traditional Jujutsu, while Hakari's methods blend with technology. He gives an example of how Kugisaki's technique aligns with what the higher-ups prefer, while they dislike Hakari's cursed technique. Kirara argues that Jujutsu High failed because their priorities are backward. He questions why they are asking for help when they have Gojo to clean up their mess. Fushiguro tries to reveal that Gojo has been sealed, but Kirara makes a face of comic disbelief, making it clear that he does not believe him. Fushiguro decides to activate Rabbit Escape and summons dozens of Rabbit Shikigami. He knows that Kirara is the closest person to Hakari and believes that negotiations with Hakari will go more smoothly if they can convince Kirara. Suddenly, Fushiguro notices that his rabbits are marked with a symbol labeled Acrux. He finds another symbol on the door labeled Gakrux. All the rabbits begin getting pulled toward him, and Kirara wonders what Fushiguro is planning with such a large number of rabbits. He knows that his cursed technique marks sorcerer's cursed energy, so Shikigami are treated the same as their user. He assumes that Fushiguro will be crushed by the rabbits, but Fushiguro dispels all of his Shikigami at once. He turns to Panda and asks what he thinks about the rabbits. Panda responds that the rabbits are cute, but not as cute as him. Fushiguro grows frustrated and clarifies that he is asking what the rabbits could or could not approach. Panda explains that the rabbits were able to reach him, but could not get close to either Kirara or the monitor room door. Fushiguro urges Panda to check if he has any marks on him. Panda searches and finds a symbol labeled Imai. Fushiguro begins searching his own body and discovers the same symbol Acrux that the rabbits had. He concludes that his divine dog must also have the same mark and speculates that Kirara's cursed technique is related to the Southern Cross constellation. Kirara is shocked that Fushiguro figured out his technique, and Fushiguro is equally surprised that his guess was correct. Kirara begins to fear that Fushiguro might completely unravel his technique and decides to stop them at all costs. Fushiguro silently thanks his sister Sumuki for teaching him about the Southern Cross and recalls that the constellation has 4 points. He asks Panda if there are 4 points in the Southern Cross. Panda confirms it since it is a cross formed by 2 intersecting lines. Fushiguro initially believes that Kirara's cursed technique assigns each of them a star in the Southern Cross to maintain a specific distance between points. However, he notices that Kirara can reach the door while he and Panda can approach each other. He suspects that the technique functions more like a board game with a determined route, meaning there is a sequential order for who can approach whom. Panda suggests that Kirara's technique might not require marking Kirara with a star, but Fushiguro disagrees. He recalls how Kirara could not approach his divine dog earlier. He wonders why Kirara has not fled inside the door, since standing at the door would keep them away. Panda guesses that there might be 5 or more stars, and suggests that they need to go through a 5th star to reach both Kirara and the door. Panda worries that there could be even more than 6 stars, but Fushiguro hopes that is not the case. Suddenly, Kirara jumps onto a car and Panda is pulled toward it. Panda notices that the car is marked with the symbol Imai. He throws the car away and urges Fushiguro to focus on Kirara. Fushiguro warns Panda not to throw the car, since it will just get pulled back to him. He deduces that Kirara's technique requires contact to mark objects, and realizes that Kirara is marking cursed energy rather than physical objects. He recalls that Kirara never touched him or the rabbits, yet they were still marked. He becomes confused about how Kirara marked the car, since it should not have cursed energy, and notices that the car has residual cursed energy from someone other than Kirara. He searches for the 5th star, assuming the technique has limited range, and finds a parking spot marked Mimosa. He touches the 5th star and confirms there are no additional residuals. Fushiguro realizes that Kirara's cursed energy is already marked with a star, so he cannot use it to mark another object with Acrux. However, to his shock, several objects marked with Acrux are already heading straight for him. It is explained that Fushiguro's hypothesis is correct, and Kirara's innate cursed technique is called Love Rendezvous. The technique marks 5 stars with a Southern Cross to target cursed energy. For 1 star to approach another, it must follow a specific order, or else targets with the same star will attract each other. The order follows the stars from nearest to furthest. While constellations appear flat on a diagram, there is depth in space, and each star is at a different distance from Earth. Since Fushiguro is marked with Acrux, he must travel through the parking spot and Kirara to reach the monitor room door. Panda remains stuck to the car, while Kirara feels impressed that Fushiguro figured out his technique, but points out that he made one mistake. He explains that Fushiguro wrongly assumed he could not throw more objects. Kirara reveals that he can remove the mark from himself and reapply it to other objects. Suddenly, Kirara is caught off guard when Divine Dog reappears behind him. Divine Dog is pulled toward Kirara, and he realizes that Fushiguro never dispelled the Shikigami. Fushiguro had already guessed that targets with the same star would attract each other, and made sure that there was a wall between them. He waited until Kirara was directly between them, and then unjammed Divine Dog from the wall, allowing it to take advantage of Kirara's position. Kirara is forced to cancel Love Rendezvous, and Fushiguro seizes the opportunity to restrain him against the ground. Fushiguro dispels Divine Dog and calmly asks Kirara to listen to him. Kirara remains skeptical and questions if Fushiguro had planned everything from the start. Kirara doubts that Fushiguro could have known whether he or the Shikigami would be pulled. Fushiguro admits that he took a gamble, but now understands that the one with the higher cursed energy output does the attracting. He explains that initially Divine Dog pulled him, but the opposite happened when he reinforced his body with cursed energy. Kirara comments that Fushiguro is not very cute for a first year, but Fushiguro suddenly lets him go. Fushiguro pleads with Kirara to listen because there is no time to waste. Kirara finally decides to trust him and agrees to hear him out. Suddenly, Yuji comes flying through the monitor room door. Fushiguro notices that Yuji has been thrown out of the room, and Panda humorously laments about how he was not much help to Fushiguro. Hakari steps outside with irritation written all over his face. Yuji tells Fushiguro and Panda not to interfere in his fight, and this makes Hakari believe that Yuji is underestimating him. Hakari immediately throws a devastating punch that smashes Yuji's face and sends him flying across the roof. Everyone is troubled by the sheer force of the hit. Hakari notices that Yuji is not even resisting. Yuji gets back to his feet before collapsing completely. He defiantly blows the blood out of his nose, and Hakari comments that Yuji seems insane for not even trying to dodge. Yuji decides not to fight back or dodge until Hakari breaks. Hakari finally agrees to hear Yuji out and flares up his cursed energy. Kirara urges Hakari to listen and explains that they only want his help. Hakari claims he will listen and asks why Yuji is specifically asking for his assistance. Yuji responds that all his senpai have confirmed Hakari's strength. Hakari suddenly punches Yuji again, and Yuji feels the impact like being hit with a serrated bat. Hakari yells at Yuji that when sorcerers ask for a favor, they are asking someone to risk their life. He demands that Yuji prove he has the fever to convince him. Yuji responds that he does not have any fever and that he is just a cog in the machine sorcerers use to eradicate curses. Hakari finds this answer boring and hits Yuji with another punch. Fushiguro grows concerned for Yuji, believing he cannot afford to take more hits. Hakari delivers his hardest blow yet, sending Yuji getting hit to the wall. Hakari reveals that Gojo once said that his cursed energy has an edge to it, which explains the cutting sensation Yuji feels when hit. Hakari begins to tell Fushiguro to grab Yuji and leave, but Yuji suddenly reappears behind him. Hakari is genuinely surprised and steps back, wondering how Yuji is still standing after taking 3 unguarded blows. He asks Yuji what he is, and Yuji repeats that he is just a cog. Yuji believes that his purpose is to eliminate curses and insists that Hakari is necessary for that goal. He declares that he will not stop until Hakari agrees to help. Yuji steps closer, looks Hakari in the eye, and asks what Hakari's function is. Hakari meets Yuji's gaze and questions if this is truly the look of a cog in fever. He feels the urge to keep punching Yuji, but Kirara interrupts to get his attention. Kirara asks Hakari if Yuji's fever is burning hot enough for him yet. Hakari acknowledges Kirara's point and admits that the fever never lies. Hakari suddenly tells Fushiguro that he is finally willing to make a deal. Fushiguro and Panda are left utterly confused by what just happened. Kirara explains that even though Hakari hates the higher-ups, his fever burns the hottest when he is helping the people at Jujutsu High. Hakari finally sits down and is completely shocked to hear that Gojo has been sealed. Panda adds that Principal Yaga died in a fight against the higher-ups. Yuji starts worrying that the principal might have died during the Shibuya incident, but Panda clarifies that he died after Shibuya. Yuji feels concerned for Panda, since Yaga was essentially his father, but Panda assures him that it is okay. Hakari expresses that he feels bummed out now that everyone who ever took care of him is gone. Hakari agrees to help with the Culling Game, and Yuji feels a small sense of relief. However, Hakari makes it clear that this is a deal and that they must return the favor in the future. Panda knows Hakari wants revisions to Jujutsu regulations and asks what exactly he desires. Fushiguro comments that he does not think Hakari's request will be difficult. This annoys Hakari since he is the one being asked for help. Hakari calls Fushiguro sea urchin head and questions what he could possibly know. Fushiguro decides to take advantage of his position and reveals that he is now the head of the Zenin Clan. Hakari is even more surprised by this revelation than the news about Gojo and Principal Yaga. He believes that with the backing of the big 3 families, making revisions to the regulations will be easy. Hakari puts on a friendly expression and suggests that he and Fushiguro should be friends. With everyone in agreement, Yuji states that they need to decide who will go to which colony. Suddenly, Kogane appears above Yuji and makes a loud ringing noise. Kogane announces that a player has added a new rule to the game, allowing players to access information about other players. This information includes their name, number of points, number of rules added, and their current colony. Kogane reveals that the rule was added by Hajime Kashimo, an elite player dominating Tokyo number 2 colony. Meanwhile, Hajime finds all the current players that he has encountered so far to be weaklings compared to those he fought 400 years ago. He wonders where Sukuna is. Meanwhile, Kogane introduces itself to Yuji, and Fushiguro is confused by why Kogane's voice sounds different from the announcement. Kogane explains that it is now acting as the liaison for the Culling Game assigned to Yuji. Fushiguro does not understand why Yuji is already considered a player before entering a barrier colony. Yuji believes it might have something to do with Sukuna and theorizes that this could be related to how Sukuna became a cursed object. Fushiguro points out that it is still strange since Yuji ingested Sukuna's finger of his own will, unlike past sorcerers who were in contracts with Kenjaku. Yuji has Kogane show him the player's information. Fushiguro uses the list to find Hajime's name and confirms that Hajime was the one who added the rule. Fushiguro believes they can get through the Culling Game without killing anyone by forcing someone with enough points to add a rule. The 2 players who fit this requirement are Hajime Kashimo and Hiromi Higuruma. To save Tsumiki, Fushiguro states that the first rule they add needs to offset Rule 8, which details cursed technique removal after 19 days of inactivity. He suggests adding a rule that allows players to transfer points between each other. After that, he proposes adding another rule that allows players to spend points to remove themselves from the game entirely. Hakari points out that this might conflict with the long-lasting rules of the game. Fushiguro suggests that it might work if a non-player substitutes for the one leaving. He acknowledges that it is ultimately up to the game master, but regardless, the team now has a plan of action. They decide to look for the angel to undo the seal on the prison realm, and also to target Hajime Kashimo and Hiromi Higuruma.